I'm Detective Marcus Reed, and I work homicide in Blackhollow, a town where fog clings to the streets like a living entity and whispers, "Follow you home at night." For 15 years, I've navigated the darkest corners of human depravity, but nothing prepared me for the Harper case. A murder where every witness seems trapped in a void of their own making. These bizarre cases require special protocols. 3 rules, passed down from the previous detective who handled similar investigations. Rules I initially dismissed as superstition until I witnessed the consequences of breaking them firsthand. If a witness forgets what they saw mid-sentence, do not try to make them remember. If someone swears they saw a different person commit the crime every time they are questioned, stop asking. If a witness suddenly starts describing the murder from the killer's perspective, end the interview immediately. Last Tuesday, I discovered Jessica Harper's body in her Victorian home on Willow Street. As I knelt beside her mutilated corpse, I noticed something that still haunts me. A strange symbol carved into the floorboards beneath her, visible only from certain angles. A symbol that no one else on my team could see. The Harper residence stands apart from its neighbors. A Victorian monstrosity with peeling blue paint and windows that reflect nothing but darkness even at noon. The porch steps groaned beneath my weight as I approached, releasing the scent of rotting wood and something metallic, like old pennies left too long in the sun. "Second murder this month with the same mo," remarked Sam Wilson, my partner of 3 years, his voice uncharacteristically tight. Sweat beaded along his hairline despite the autumn chill. "You don't think we have a..." "Let's not jump to conclusions," I interrupted, though the sick feeling in my stomach suggested otherwise. The front door hung ajar, revealing a sliver of the horror within. The metallic smell intensified as we stepped inside. The unmistakable copper tang of blood mixed with the sickly sweet odor of early decomposition. Jessica Harper lay spread eagle in the center of our living room, her chest cavity splayed open like a grotesque flower. Her eyes remained open, cloudy with death but somehow alert, as if still witnessing something beyond our perception. What struck me most wasn't the brutality of the murder. I'd seen worse. But the precision. The cuts showed surgical exactitude, and the blood pooled in unnatural patterns, forming shapes that seemed almost deliberate. I knelt beside the body, and that's when I saw it. A symbol carved into the floorboards beneath her, visible only when the light hit just right. An intricate spiral pattern with jagged lines radiating outward like a corrupted sun. "Do you see that?" I asked Sam, pointing to the symbol. He squinted, then shook his head. "See what?" "The blood spatter." I blinked, and for a moment the symbol seemed to pulse, as if breathing. When I looked again, it appeared more prominent. "Never mind," I muttered, unable to shake the sensation that the symbol was somehow watching me. The first witness arrived as the coroner was zipping Jessica into a body bag. Mrs. Elkins, an elderly neighbor who had called 911 after hearing ungodly screams from Jessica's home the previous night. "I saw someone leaving through the back gate," she began, her veined hands clutching a handkerchief. A tall figure wearing dark. Her voice faltered, eyes going blank mid-sentence. I can't seem to remember what they looked like. It's all buggy now." Rule 1 echoed in my mind. If a witness forgets what they saw mid-sentence, do not try to make them remember. "That's all right, Mrs. Elkins," I said, closing my notebook. "Why don't you tell me about when you heard the screams instead?" Her expression cleared slightly, but a tremor remained in her voice. It wasn't like normal screaming. It sounded like Jessica was trying to say something between the screams. A name, maybe, or a word in another language. As Mrs. Elkins left, Officer Parker arrived with information about Jessica's background. 32 years old, librarian at Blackhollow University's rare books collection. Lived alone since her divorce 3 years ago. No known enemies. While the forensic team processed the scene, I conducted a preliminary search of the house. Jessica's bedroom appeared undisturbed until I noticed the corner of a leather-bound journal peeking from beneath her mattress. I extracted it carefully, the leather cool and slightly damp against my fingers. The journal's pages contained meticulous entries dating back 6 months, each in Jessica's neat handwriting. The early entries documented ordinary events, work anecdotes, comments about neighbors, frustrations about her ex-husband. But around 3 months ago, the tone changed dramatically. March 15th. I feel watched today, not by anyone visible, but by eyes that exist in the space between moments. When I turn quickly, I catch glimpses of something in my peripheral vision, a figure that vanishes when I try to focus on it. March 28th. The dreams have started again. In them, I'm both observer and participant, watching myself perform actions I have no memory of in waking life. Last night, I dreamed I was carving something into my kitchen floor at 3:17 a.m. When I woke, there was dirt under my fingernails. The final entry, dated just 2 days before her murder, sent ice through my veins. April 12th. It knows I see it now. It whispers my name when I'm alone, not with sound, but directly into my thoughts. The symbol appears everywhere, in water stains, in dust patterns, in the condensation on my bathroom mirror. I've stopped sleeping. If I sleep, it will take more than just memories this time. As I closed the journal, the hairs on my arms stood on end. Through the bedroom window, I could see fog rolling in, unusually thick for this time of year. And within that fog, just for a moment, I thought I saw a figure watching the house, tall and unnaturally still. The county morgue occupies the basement of Blackhollow Memorial Hospital, a labyrinthine space of cold tile and humming fluorescent lights. Dr. Eleanor Price, the medical examiner, waited for me beside Jessica Harper's body, her usual professional demeanor tinged with unease. "I've never seen anything like this," she said without preamble, gesturing for me to approach the examination table. Jessica's body had been cleaned, the Y incision from the autopsy neatly sutured. But what drew my attention were the markings on her skin, faint lines and whorls that hadn't been visible at the crime scene, now exposed under the harsh morgue lighting. At first, I thought these were post-mortem lividi or ligature marks, Dr. Price explained, pointing to a pattern on Jessica's inner arm. But they're actually subcutaneous hemorrhaging in precise patterns, almost like the symbol, I whispered, recognizing the same spiral pattern I'd seen beneath Jessica's body. Dr. Price's eyebrows rose. "You've seen this before?" I described what I'd observed at the crime scene and the journal I'd found. Her expression grew troubled. "There's more," she said, pointing to Jessica's open chest cavity. The cause of death wasn't blood loss or organ trauma, as I initially suspected. It was cerebral hemorrhaging. Her brain essentially liquefied from within. How is that possible? Medically, it isn't. Dr. Price pulled up brain scan images on a nearby monitor. "Look at the hippocampus and amygdala, the areas associated with memory and fear. They show signs of extreme activation before death, literally burning out from overuse." "Like she was literally scared to death?" I asked. "More like her brain consumed itself trying to remember something it couldn't process." She lowered her voice, though we were alone in the morgue. "Detective, I've heard rumors about other cases like this, cases where witnesses can't remember what they saw." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the morgue's temperature. "What kind of rumors?" "That memories aren't just forgotten. They're taken, and whatever takes them leaves something else behind." As if on cue, the lights flickered, casting momentary shadows that seemed to move independently from their sources. When they stabilized, Dr. Price was staring at a point just past my shoulder, her face drained of color. "Eleanor," I prompted. She blinked rapidly, composure returning. "I'm fine, just tired." She handed me a flash drive. "All my findings are here, including some research on similar neurological anomalies from medical journals." Before leaving the morgue, I examined Jessica's personal effects, clothes, jewelry, and a silver locket found around her neck. Inside the locket was a small photograph of Jessica standing in front of an unfamiliar building, her expression somber. On the back of the photo, written in tiny script, where it began, where it ends. Outside the hospital, I found Jason Clark, Jessica's ex-husband, waiting by my car. His eyes were bloodshot, hands trembling slightly as he approached. "Detective Reed," he called. "I need to talk to you about Jess." "Mr. Clark," I acknowledged. "I'm sorry for your loss. They told me how she was found," he said, voice cracking. "It doesn't make sense. Who would do that to her? That's what I'm trying to determine. Did Jessica have any enemies? Anyone who might wish her harm?" His gaze shifted to something over my shoulder, then back to me. "I saw someone hanging around her house last week when I was dropping off some books she'd left behind." "Can you describe them?" "A man, tall, wearing a black coat." He paused, brow furrowing. "No, wait, that's not right. It was a woman. Red hair, I think." Warning bells sounded in my mind. Rule 2. If someone swears they saw a different person commit the crime every time they are questioned, stop asking. "Actually," Clark continued, his expression growing more confused, "I'm not sure now. Every time I try to picture them, it changes." He rubbed his temples. "Christ, what's wrong with me? I know I saw someone." "It's all right," I said, keeping my voice even. "Trauma can affect memory. Why don't you tell me about Jessica instead? Had she mentioned feeling afraid recently?" "Being watched." His eyes widened. "How did you know?" "She called me 2 weeks ago, rambling about someone following her. I thought she was just dressed from work." Guilt flashed across his face. "She mentioned dreams too. Said she kept dreaming about a symbol." "Did she describe it?" Clark's expression suddenly went blank, his gaze unfocused. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Deeper, hollow. "The spiral opens both ways, detective. What observes can be observed. What hunts can be hunted." My blood ran cold. Rule 3 loomed in my mind. If a witness suddenly starts describing the murder from the killer's perspective, end the interview immediately. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Clark," I said, backing toward my car. "I'll be in touch if I have more questions." As I drove away, Clark remained standing in the parking lot, staring after me with that empty expression. In my rearview mirror, I could have sworn the fog around him momentarily took human form before dissipating. Back at the precinct, I began organizing the case files, adding Jessica's journal and Dr. Price's findings. As I worked, I noticed something strange. My earlier notes seemed different somehow, details shifting subtly from what I remembered writing. A witness statement I was certain mentioned a tall figure in a coat, now described a shadow that moved wrong. I rubbed my eyes, fatigue clearly affecting my recall. The office had emptied while I worked, leaving me alone with the humming fluorescent lights and the persistent fog pressing against the windows like curious fingers. When I closed my eyes, just for a moment, I saw the symbol from Jessica's floor floating in the darkness of my mind. And beneath it, whispered words in a voice I didn't recognize. "Remember the rules, Detective Reed. They won't save you, but they'll keep you sane a little longer." The next morning, I found myself back at the station, poring over the newly gathered evidence. The air was thick with unease, the fog outside pressing against the windows as if trying to invade the sanctuary of the precinct. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, lurking just beyond the veil of reality. I decided to visit St. Matthew's Church again, hoping to find answers hidden among the whispers of the congregation. The musty scent of aged wood and incense hung in the air as I entered, the familiar atmosphere calming yet unsettling. Father Andrew greeted me with a concerned expression. "Detective Mercer, you're looking worse for wear. What troubles you?" "I'm investigating the recent murders," I replied, steeling myself. "Have you noticed anything unusual among the parishioners? Any strange prayers or confessions?" His brow furrowed. "There have been whispers, yes. Strange prayers that seemed to call for something beyond our understanding. He glanced around, lowering his voice. Some parishioners have left with a different look in their eyes. It's as if they've forgotten something important. The hairs on my neck stood on end. What do you mean? Forgotten? Father Andrew leaned in closer. They come to me in distress seeking forgiveness, but they leave altered, like pieces of them have been taken. The atmosphere grew colder as he spoke, and I noticed the shadows lengthening around us. What could be doing this? I fear it may be connected to the murders, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. There are things that lurk in the void, detective. Things that feed on fear and memory. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words pressing down on me like a physical force. I needed to know more. But before I could ask, the church doors swung open, and a gust of cold air rushed in. In walked a young woman, her face pale and drawn. "Father, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling. I saw someone. Father Andrew glanced at me, then back at her. "Go ahead, my child." The woman glanced at me, then back to the priest. I saw Clara. Last night, she was asking for help, but there was someone with her. I couldn't see who. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. "What do you mean she was asking for help?" She kept whispering my name. But then I heard another voice, and it was wrong. It felt like it was inside my head. I had to get out of there. I turned to leave, but the air felt thick, almost suffocating. I could hear whispers echoing through the church, growing louder by the second. I stumbled back, trying to shake off the feeling of dread that clung to me. Days passed, and the investigation led nowhere. Witnesses continued to forget what they had seen. The townsfolk grew increasingly paranoid, and the whispers became a constant presence in my mind. I returned to the church, desperately seeking answers. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and the scent of burning incense hung heavily in the air. As I approached Father Andrew, I noticed the congregation had grown smaller, their faces lined with anxiety. "Detective," he said, his voice low and grave. "We need to talk. I need to know what's happening to these people," I urged. "They're being watched. Something is feeding on their fears, their memories. It's connected to the murders." The air grew colder as he spoke, and I noticed the shadows lengthening around us. "What do you mean?" "They come to me, seeking forgiveness, but they leave with something taken from them. Their memories of the event are erased, altered, twisted. That night, I was restless, unable to shake the feeling that I was being watched. I decided to return to Clara's house, convinced that the answers lay within. The air was thick with the scent of mold and decay as I pushed open the door. Inside, everything was exactly as it had been the night Clara was killed. The police tape still hung across the living room, and the faint sound of whispers seemed to echo through the walls. Suddenly I heard it, a voice calling my name from the shadows. "Alex, come closer." Heart pounding, I followed the sound to the back room, where the whispers grew louder. The atmosphere shifted, thickening with an oppressive weight. I could almost make out words, fragments of prayers laced with desperation. The shadows twisted and morphed, revealing a figure. I stumbled back as I recognized Clara, her face contorted in anguish. "Help me," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Clara," I shouted, reaching out to her. But the moment my hand touched the wall, the vision shattered, and I was thrown backward. I woke on the floor, disoriented, but the whispers persisted. I struggled to my feet, heart racing. The walls around me seemed to pulse, as if they were alive, thrumming with energy. A sudden realization washed over me. I had to return to the church. There was something there, something I had missed. I sprinted back, the whispers guiding me as I entered the sanctuary. The congregation was gathered, their faces blank, eyes glazed over. Father Andrew stood before them, chanting in that strange tongue. "Stop," I shouted, but my voice was drowned out by the cacophony of prayers. As I moved closer, I noticed one parishioner, a man I'd interviewed, his eyes wide with terror. He was trying to speak, but was unable, his mouth moving as if trying to remember lost words. Then it happened. The whispers grew louder, intensifying, and I felt their energy surge through me. I stumbled back, grabbing my head as visions flooded my mind. Images of the murders, of Clara, of every victim whose memory had been stolen. In that moment I understood. The entity feeding on their fears was tied to the church itself. To break the cycle, I needed to confront it directly. I pushed through the crowd, reaching Father Andrew. "This has to stop. You're feeding it." He turned, his eyes glinting with something dark. "Feeding? No, detective. I am its vessel. I am its vessel. And you are the final offering." Before I could react, the congregation turned, their faces morphing into grotesque masks of fear and longing, mouths whispering my name in unison. "Leave now. I command you," I shouted, fighting the urge to succumb to despair. But the whispers enveloped me, wrapping around my mind, drawing me into a darkness deeper than I had ever known. I felt the weight of every prayer, every memory lost, pressing down on me until I could hardly breathe. As the darkness threatened to consume me, I remembered the rules. I had to break free from its hold. I closed my eyes and focused on the whispered prayers, channeling their energy. "Your power is nothing without the names," I screamed, opening my eyes to the chaos surrounding me. "I remember them. Clara, Sarah, David. Every victim is sacred." Suddenly, the energy shifted. The congregation faltered, their whispers growing softer as I willed their memories back to the surface. "Remember," I shouted. "Remember who you are." In that moment, their faces changed, fear replaced by clarity. The power of their shared memories surged through the room, breaking the entity's grip. The shadows writhed and recoiled, and Father Andrew screamed as the darkness ripped free from his control. I felt their prayers lift, a chorus rising against the malevolent force. The entity howled as I pushed back, pouring every ounce of my will into severing its connection. The church shook violently as the last remnants of the entity were expelled, a blinding light filling the sanctuary. When the light faded, the church stood empty, the congregation gone, the echoes of their memories lingering like a fading dream. I stumbled back, gasping for breath, the weight of what had happened crashing down on me. The mark behind my ear was gone, leaving behind only a faint scar, a reminder of the darkness I had faced. Outside, the dawn broke over Eldridge, washing the town in warm light. The air felt different, lighter, as if a heavy shroud had lifted. I walked away from the church knowing it would never truly leave me. 3 months passed. I found work as a groundskeeper at a small church in a neighboring town. Mundane work, maintaining gardens and fixing plumbing. The church itself was unremarkable, its services conventional, its congregation ordinary in their devotions. The dreams began gradually, whispers at the edge of consciousness, prayers filtering through from somewhere beyond sleep. I dismissed them as trauma echoes, psychological aftermath of my experience at St. Ecclesia Obscura, until I noticed the stone baptismal font in the church's side chapel, identical to the one that had concealed the entrance to the chamber beneath St. Ecclesia, and the small symbols carved beneath the pews, worn smooth by generations of touching fingers. And finally, the mark returning behind my ear, faint but unmistakable. I called Eliza immediately. "It's happening again," I told her without preamble. "Different church, same entities." Her voice sounded distant, resigned. "They were never just in that building, Michael. The church was a focal point, not their only access to our world." "Then what did we accomplish?" I demanded. "We closed one door. but prayers create their own openings. I heard shuffling papers on her end. My grandmother's notes mentioned other structures, other focal points across the country, places where the barrier is maintained through different means. That night, I discovered a new caretaker had been hired, a young woman with haunted eyes, and a story of lost faith following personal tragedy. As I showed her around the grounds, the parish priest approached with a yellowed piece of parchment in hand. "The rules for night attendance," he explained, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Critical for your duties." I caught a glimpse of the familiar text. 3 rules, written in meticulous calligraphy with ink that looked suspiciously brown rather than black. "I'll handle her orientation," I said quickly, intercepting the parchment. Later, in the garden where stone angels watched with expressions between ecstasy and agony, I showed the new caretaker the mark behind my ear. "You have a choice," I told her. "One I wasn't given. The barrier between worlds must be maintained, but the cost need not be unwitting. Sacrifice." I explained everything. The entities that exist between words and meaning, the prayers that feed them, the vessels that channel them, how I had become a living lock on a door that constantly seeks to open. Those who listen exist where intention meets articulation, I explained. They cannot be destroyed or banished permanently, but they can be contained through conscious choice rather than manipulation. At night, I still hear the whispers, prayers filtering through the thin membrane between worlds. I feel the weight of what presses against reality's edge, hungry for manifestation, for the power to answer and transform. But I am no longer hollowed out by loss of faith. Instead, I am filled with purpose, not to serve those who listen, but to ensure they hear only what we choose to voice. Every prayer has power. Every word creates ripples in reality. Choose carefully what you pray for, and to whom, or what, you direct your supplication. And if you ever find yourself in a church where the shadows move against the light, where the confessional whispers when empty, where you feel eyes upon you during moments of deepest prayer, remember the rules. Some prayers are not meant to be heard, but sometimes they are heard anyway.